Hello, this is Lex Berman with Diamond Bay Research. I'll be presenting on georeferencing historical maps with QGIS version 3.16. This is on behalf of Conrad Lawson with the Institute for Transnational and Spatial History at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. In this presentation, I'll evaluate historical map image, acquire some vector base maps that we'll use to georeference that image, and then we'll pin ground control points from our historical map to the base map, and then we'll use those to transform it to a georectified image. This is a follow-up to a previous video I made using an earlier version of QGIS 2.12. And you can watch that if you want. It's still perfectly valid. In fact, the method I used there was to georeference a map of Calcutta, which you can see in the lower left here, and it had very good detail, but as you can see, it was oriented in quite a different way from north being up. In fact, it's much more like in the real world coordinates, it's much more like the map on the right, which is from a different cartographer, and roughly the same period in the middle of the 19th century. And what I did was I first digitized the map on the right with the orange background because it had some of the same features that I knew I could hook together. The fort, the river, various city features. And I first digitized this orange map, and then I used it to bootstrap digitizing the other map. And that's one method that you could use for historical maps. In this presentation, I'm going to deal with a map that has an unknown projection. Now we could figure it out because it's from the Austro-Hungarian Empire Military Institute, and I'm sure that they have some details about how their projection works. However, my experience with it and having looked it up, it seems to be a very obscure Gauss-Kruger projection, probably on a Krasovsky spheroid, that it's going to be very hard to figure out exactly what it is. So if you do try to use the original projection to get it really accurately georeferenced, then you're going to have to reproject your vector data that you want to hook it to into the same projection. And then later you'd have to transform it into your whatever desired projection that you want. The problem with that is that if you make an error, if you pick the wrong projection or something, then you will introduce a whole lot of distortions, and in fact the map might become unusable once it's been resampled. So the reason why I like this map is because, and why I think it's a good example, unlike the other one where both of the maps were relatively good maps in terms of the projection wasn't that big of a problem. But in this map, it's a different case. It's sort of like they did a lot of detail around Prague, as you can see in this detail in the upper left. And then, it was a good map, but, it probably had distortions the further you went away from that detailed area. And so I wanted to do a case where the detailed part of Prague is really accurate, and then we would just see what happened with the rest of the map. So if we were to start this and just start a new project and go ahead and bring in some spatial data that I downloaded previously, I went to GeoFabric, which is GeoFabrik, and they provide downloads by country that are free in shapefile format, and it's based on the OpenStreetMap data. And I went ahead and I got the data that I needed for the Czech Republic, and I unzipped it, and I have buildings, I have roads, waterways. The ones I really wanted were the buildings. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up and add it to my map. And then I want to take a look at it. So this is what these look like. their drawing. It's rendering. It's a lot of data actually. And you can see here's Prague. That's like where all the built-up space is. Now the projection is shown in the lower right corner. I don't know. Can you see that? There, EPSG 4326. So that's going to be your standard WGS 84 projection. So my recommendation when you're doing this is just use the target projection that you want and then hook your historic map to that. So we can go ahead and load up our georeferencer. In fact, I don't think you can see the menu up there too well, but under the raster menu you've got your georeferencer and you can add the map. And then you would just simply put in that image that I mentioned, which is this military map. And my strategy here was, now here's the thing, we could go in and we could try to look at these coordinates and just pin them to the coordinates. However, if you look at it, it's like, it says 50 degrees, 15, and 32 degrees. Now, I know it's not 32 degrees. So again, I don't know exactly what they were doing here, but these are not the real world coordinates. So I'm not going to try to pin it to the four corners based on those coordinates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pin it to known shapes and buildings in Prague. And we've got the river to help us here. So what you do then, in that case, is you can put them side by side if that's useful, like so. I don't think it'll let me actually. Bad advice there. The map render requires a certain amount of space in this particular screen on a laptop, but we can zoom in and then that will solve it for us once my RAM catches up here. Okay, so if this is the area, the target area of interest right here, in fact quite a bit closer in, just like this is good enough, even closer. Alright, so now we've got our base map in a known projection and we can start identifying features. I do actually want to add the roads. That's going to help. So let me quickly grab the vector data set for roads. It's in the same folder. Okay. Add. So now we've got the bridges and so on. That makes it a lot clearer. So essentially, you've got this major known bridge, which is at the northern edge of the old city of Prague. And you can start choosing your georeferencing tools. You add a point with this yellow one. And I would pick the corner of a building like this and add from the map canvas, and then pick the exact corner of the exact building. And I'll go kind of fast because I've done this before, and there's no reason for you to wait around while I'm, looking up each map point in detail, which can take quite a long time if you're, if it's new data to you and you've never seen it before. If you're really familiar with the geography, then you can pin them right off. And in this way, you can just get a heck of a lot done in a short amount of time. And move your map around as needed. Okay, so move this around over here. So you've got this promenade here, Vaslavsky na Miest, famous place. I would just pick like the corner building right here, add from canvas, is halfway down, the corner building right here. Bingo. And then you just want to get a few around the edges of your area of interest, really, to get yourself going. And let's see, you've got your insul here, You can go ahead and put one right on the bottom, the tip of that insul. Okay. And you want to do some more, here's this big park shape here, that's kind of interesting. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was, we're not getting any residual impact over here until we do our first georeferencing. Once you run it, it will calculate and try to figure out how well you did. I'm going to add some over here. Okay. And this is just, Prague's just a great city to do because of these buildings are so old and so consistent, really. Just incredibly consistent. I'll do the other side of the park. Right here. All right, well, let's just try to run it and see what happens. So we're going to run it. I didn't set the transformation type. That's super important. Now, this is a very important thing to consider here. Which transformation type do you want to use? Well, if it's a really weird, warped map that you have no idea what's going on, thin plate spline is really what you want. You could use polynomial 1 or 2 in this case, but I think I'm going to go for thin plate spline actually and see what happens. Oh, you know what? That won't regularly do the rest of the map, so I want to do polynomial 2 in this case. And then you have a resampling method. These just have to do with the math, like whether you're overlapping the nearest cell in the image, target image, or whether you're doing a calculation based on the average of 4 cells that are nearest to it, or a cubic calculation, which is basically 16 cells. But we can do nearest neighbor. You want to give it an output name. So I like to put those in a target folder and just give it a short name so it's not too elaborate. And I'm probably going to do more than one, so Prague 1. Okay, so now save the points, sure. Use 0 for transparency, that's nice because then it won't make a black, collar around it when it can't figure out what to do. I'm going to hit OK. Now we can run it. And we need to go back to the georeferencer to get where we were. Come on, where were we? I know you're there. Oh, there you are. Sometimes you have to play with the screens to find your georeferencer. Okay, there. Now we'll run the georeferencing calculation. And we will go and add it to our map. Now, raster, we should have a raster data set in this place with its points. Add. Close. So now if we put that below our other information, we can see that we're already pretty good. We're already pretty good for the city of Prague. Now, the question is, what about if we go farther out? And of course, you can see that based on this color bar that was at the bottom of the original image, that was a regular rectangle, and now it's, it's sort of an angular shape here. And if you were to go out and check out some of these more distant, look at these weird artifacts we're getting here, and that's the polynomial 2. That's what's going on with the polynomial 2 when it can't figure out anything beyond the edge. So we can go ahead and try another one actually. We can reset the transformation settings to thin plate spline, and we can give it a different name and hit OK. And you notice down here, see, they can't calculate these residual pixels very well, so there's some errors in there that we did not catch. We were sloppy and didn't add enough points. And this is probably the minimum amount of points you want. You probably really want around 10 points. And I'm going to go ahead and add the next view. And you will see here, add. You'll see here that in the same area, it's not nearly as badly skewed, because it will only stretch it where you've indicated it should stretch, and it'll leave the rest of the image alone. So if we drag that back underneath, now we're going to see that, what appears to be a much better alignment. And again, if you go to the corner of the map, one strategy that I would have would be to now go to the corner of the map and start to identify some of the towns, you can get a town that has a really distinct shape, and you could try to correct the interior georeferencing of that particular town. And for example, if there was a known crossroad and you gave it an extra ground control point, chances are that it would help correct the entire image. Even so, I think that you can see that in this case, the thin plate spline did so much better than the polynomial 2. And in terms of our city of Prague, well, we now have just really pretty much of a beautiful georeferencing going on. We could then drag points up and add new ones, if we chose to try to fix some of this internal drift. And that would probably be, the way that I would next proceed. Here's this bridge. Here's this bridge. So right here, we have a really clearly, obvious candidate here at the top of this. And it would be right here. Okay. Now, it didn't help at all. The residual points are really bad. So, even if we ran it, and that's going to overwrite my last one, because I didn't change the name of the file. So if I was to reload that file, it should replace it with the updated version. And you can see that it's pulled itself into a slightly better alignment. So this is the kind of noodling around you can do, once you've got your basic georeferencing done. And it's a strategy for how to deal with a map where we don't have any idea what the actual projection was that it was created in, and we just focus tightly on the place that has the most detail, that looks like they did the best job, and then slightly tweak the edges a little bit in order to rubber sheet it a little better using the thin plate spline method. So in the second part of this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the kinds of errors that can take place, and strategies that you might have for fixing those. So thanks a lot for joining me, and see you then.